The big games coming up at the weekend, and I suppose it's fair to say, particularly from a Limerick point of view, that we're engrossed in it here in the county. I know there are people from Clare and Cork, and I'm sure it's the same everywhere in the four counties. Now we have a very distinguished panel here with us this evening to discuss among other things the two games at the weekend. And we have, in addition to the panel, so all four counties are going to be represented by distinguished past players here. So from far over end, I think he needs no introduction, Mr. Kieran Carey. Beside him is somebody I think that's familiar to you all. He's one of your own, Brian Corcoran. Right in the centre, a man that did Limerick a bit of damage in his time, Derek Conan from Clare. Another star who gave many years, decade and a half, to the Limerick green jersey, Mr. Ollie Morton. And the last member of our panel, representing the All-Ireland champions, Galway, Mr. Ollie Kenny. Now, obviously, we're going to discuss in detail the two semi-finals at the weekend, and at the end of it, we're going to put the lads on the spot as to who they think will win, and we might invite a few questions and a few comments. But before we go on to the semi-finals, I suppose this has been a very special year for hurling, in that there has been a new format, and I think it's only right that maybe we should touch on the new format and see what our panel think of the new format, whether it's a hit, whether it's a miss, and how they'd like to see it changed. Kieran, you might start off there.
Thanks, Matt. Can you hear me? Hello? You hear me now? Yeah, I suppose it's like anything else. Anything that's new is kind of really on a trial basis. Whereas the matches appear to be very good and coming very rapid in succession. It just shows, I suppose, it didn't too long ago, I suppose 2 or 3 years ago, there was an awful lot of hullabaloo and talk about player welfare, meaning you couldn't play within 8 or 9 days. Now they could play about 4 major championship games in the 1 month. And I suppose at the tail end of it, actually, I went down to see Kilkenny and Galway, and it's rare for a big championship match like that with about 10,000 there. So there is areas, I suppose, that needs looked at and needs to be tweaked, and I suppose really it shouldn't be motivated really by money. So there is areas, but having said that, the championship has been top class, up to date. The standard of hurling equally has been top class. So my view is kind of maintain it, but do a bit of tweaking around it, I'd say.
Yeah. Brian Corcoran, old format or new format? Corcoran Munster champions.
I agree with Kieran. I would go new format. And obviously, any change, some people the traditionalists won't like it. If you look at their advantages, disadvantages, from a player perspective, I think it's great. Obviously, they're playing a lot of games, but that's what they want to be doing. Back in when we started years ago, you had one bite at the cherry. If you lost the first round, season was over. Now you're guaranteed a number of games at least. And if you're not playing games, you're going to be playing challenge games. So I think if you ask the players what they'd like to do, they'd prefer to be playing games in front of crowds, the big games, as opposed to traveling the country playing challenge games. So for me, it's the new format is great. It's been great for hurling, but maybe not so great for supporters. I mean, to Kieran's point, I think the GA probably need to look at the cost structure around it. You know, for families to go to these games now, week in, week out, it is expensive. So definitely there should be something done in relation to the ticketing system, or a season ticket or something like that. But from a hurling point of view, I think it's worked out great. The games have been fantastic, and every team can honestly say they've been given a fair shot. Teams, you know, some teams have I mean, Limerick are playing on Sunday, Clare are playing on Sunday. They were beaten earlier in the season, but they've earned a second chance, and that's I think that's great.
Derek, you're not long out of the county scene. You were very much involved in 2013. You're observing the new system from the sidelines at the moment. What's your take on the new system?
Yeah, well, same as the lads now. I'd have to be very much in favour of the new system that's there. I think it's made for a fantastic championship, particularly in Munster. Maybe the crowds might have been a little bit down in Leinster because the same competition probably wasn't there, and we had a fair idea what teams were going to progress. But definitely in Munster, championship has been fantastic, and the one, I suppose, agreeing with Kieran again, there are tweaks that are necessary. Probably the main one for me would be the fact that two teams went out 4 weeks in a row, and Waterford and Tip both failed to progress, and that probably played a part in that. So I would think, great idea, but just to level up the playing field probably for next year.
Ollie, there were mixed views and mixed opinions, and a certain amount of scepticism about the new format before it kicked off. There was a school of thought that said it would really suit teams like Limerick. What do you think?
Yeah, and I would have went along with that train of thought purely for the reason that, you know, guys that are relatively inexperienced were guaranteed to get at least four games in Munster. You know, Brian mentioned 15-20 years ago when you started playing Munster Championship. Like, I went through my first, I think, 3 years with Limerick, and we won championship match in both those 3 years. So in effect, you were 3 years before you were anyway used to the you know, to the pace and the intensity of championship hurling. Whereas I think from a Limerick perspective, we had the advantage of being guaranteed that guys were straight into it. We were lucky in that, I won't say we were lucky to beat Tip, we were far from lucky to beat Tip. Played very well against Tipperary, but got huge momentum from that, and I think kicked on then against Cork and against Waterford. Okay, definitely the major issue to be looked at is the whole notion of playing 4 games inside a very condensed period of time. The one thing I would say, again, from a player perspective is, like, I actually, this is what these guys are training for. You know, we've heard for the last number of years the level of training that these guys are doing. Like, most inter-county players now are going to be back in pre-season training in around end of September, probably back doing collective training October time. Like, so it doesn't make sense to be doing that level of training, you know, to have 1, possibly 2 championship matches like what Limerick had last year. Like, Limerick were beaten by Clare, played Kilkenny, were gone 2 or 3 weeks later. So I think from that point of view, it certainly works. Just the final point I'd make is just, you know, clubs. I think the loser in all this is certainly the clubs, and the way we were just talking about it beforehand there, the way the club player now is being kind of pushed out, really, you know.
Yeah, but you possibly see the day when there'll be a distinction between county players may not be playing club. Yeah. Ollie, there's a perception out there, and I suppose it has been borne out over the last 2 years. 3 of the semi-finalists last year were from Munster. 3 of the semi-finalists this year again are from Munster, and that's not wearing Munster hat. But there's a perception out that the standard is much higher in Munster. It's much more competitive in Munster. Unless the sky fell down, it was going to be Galway, Kilkenny and Wexford were going to come out of Leinster, whilst nobody could say for certain what 3 counties would come out of Munster.
Yeah, it's a fair point, and I think I won't wear the Leinster hat, obviously, because I'm from Galway, but look, we've had some very, very competitive games in Leinster as well. I think Dublin improved, but unfortunately for Offaly, I think a lot of their games, they lost, I think, 3 games by a total of 50 or 60 points or something like that. So they really are, you know, there's nobody in Munster at that level where you think, going out in the Munster Championship game, is this team going to steamroll the opposition? So from a Leinster point of view, there was a couple of games in Leinster this year that didn't live up to the same standard as the Munster Championship. And what you find in Munster is all the teams are very, very even. And even Waterford getting to the final last year, they were such misfortune, I suppose, with injuries and missing players for one reason or another. So, like, Derek McGrath had a very, very, the worst year, I suppose, he could have envisaged after getting to the final last year. We still feel that there was lots of quality games in Leinster, but the Munster Championship this year was on fire, to be fair. But, you know, will a Munster team win the All-Ireland this year? I don't know. We'll be talking about that later on.
just briefly to wrap it up, I'll just ask the panel once again, briefly, Kieran, what changes would you make, if any?
Certainly, I'd accommodate it around affordability. I'd accommodate it slightly around for the...
Sorry, not cutting across you. Do you think that 3 games in a row is an issue? It has been hyped during the summer.
Well, like as I said, not to be sounded like a scratch record, it's only 2 years ago the GPA were all about player welfare. Now all of a sudden, 2 years later, they're out playing championship hurling at the highest level and supposed to produce the goods, maximise their potential 3 weeks in a row. So that's pretty heavy, to be fair.
Yeah.
So as I said, when I was on about tweaking, it's probably that area really that I would be talking about.
Brian, what would you change?
As I mentioned earlier, the ticketing from a supporter perspective, I mean, the 4 games in 4 weeks, whatever, you know, or the, you know...
Do you think that's an issue from a player point of view?
I think it's better than 1 game a year, but maybe spread out over in other weeks so there's a break there. But the reality is most teams these days, anyway, if they have a weekend off, they're going to be training, they're going to be doing a hard session, or they're going to be playing a challenge game. So to me, I prefer to play championship game than the challenge game any day. So if I was playing now, I would be delighted with it compared to what it was years ago, because it gives people the opportunity to play in the height of the season when you want to be playing.
I suppose, Matt, if I come in just for 1 second from a player's point of view, I suppose any time that, I just thinking back there, if I played week after week after week, usually would be with your club, involved in a Munster club, then heading into the All-Ireland series. And I suppose from the team that's winning, the momentum is good, and you know, the roller coaster has kept going. Whereas when you lose in the middle of that, I suppose trying to get a team up for the following week, it's slightly tight in around preparation, in around the stats, in around the amount of work that needs to be done now. So from that point of view, a team that loses during that journey, they're at a huge disadvantage. Like.
Yeah. Derek, would you change it?
Just that small tweak. I think it's close to being perfect, really. But I would just say, from my own experience playing, I suppose 7 days after a championship match, 7 days after another championship match, it takes its toll. And I'm sure it could be arranged whereby each team wouldn't have to play more than 2 weeks in a row. And that's the only change really that I would make.
Ali?
Yeah, like that, absolutely. You know, 2 matches in a week is the most, at least a week break in between. I think in order to facilitate that, they're going to probably have to make the inter-county season that little bit longer. We may have to look at a situation where the championship starts maybe a couple of weeks earlier. And maybe push it out at the other end, but again, that's going to have to be tweaked around club fixtures.
Yeah, Ali, would you be happy with it in its present format?
Yeah, I would, and I think as a whole, the whole GA community, I think believe that the 4 weeks in a row is too much for some teams, and I think there's a chance, because my recollection is the Leinster Championship started a week before the Munster Championship, so there should be a week there to get in the middle there to just break it up a small bit. As regards, I think there's way more positives. I think having the home games, and I know Waterford, it's not even from Waterford, you would agree with this, but having the home games was a big thing for counties. I think, you know, there's the whole thing about there's so many games, and if you have family and bring in the family, but I think people have to kind of maybe choose to support the home teams now. We had Kilkenny down in Galway for the Leinster Championship, and it was a fantastic atmosphere in Galway, and that's something that I know Galway people really enjoyed. Waterford, I think next year, just on that point, they'll probably look for Nolan Park, I think, maybe, and I think they should be given that leeway if they want to choose Nolan Park as their home pitch next year if Walsh Park is not up to the standards required. But for me, it's been a great championship. Definitely, I think everybody would agree there needs to be a break in the middle, because I don't believe it's fatigue. These players are so fit, they look after themselves so well now, but it's the mental preparation week in, week out. You're actually drained after inter-county games now. The body will take so much hits. If you pick up slight injuries, you could be out for 6 days time, but the mental thing about you just get down out of a game, and then come Wednesday you're building your mind again for the battle ahead, and that's a big toll, I believe, anyway, on the players, is the mental thing of playing 4 weeks in a row, because it's all on the line and these guys are training for months and months and months. So tweaks for sure, but definitely it's been a great success, I believe.
Yeah, so I can take it that the panel think it's a hit. So,
Yeah.
Right, we'll move on then to the real business, the real meat of it, what has been brought about by the Summer of Hurling, the two semi-finals on Saturday and Sunday. And Ali, you were in full flow there a minute ago, and you were saying that you didn't know whether a team from Munster would win it or not. Well, if there's a team, if somebody from Munster don't win it, there's only one team that can win it. There's a perception out there it's Galway's to lose.
Yeah, I don't know. I hate when I hear people saying that, and you even hear Galway lads saying that. I don't think any All-Ireland is a team's to lose. I think you have to go out and play to your potential every day. I think Galway are in a space where they look very composed. I think the second game against Kilkenny was a big test for them. Kilkenny came back and Galway responded really well in the last 15 or 20 minutes, and that was probably something we wouldn't have seen from Galway teams down through the years. So from looking at it from a Galway man's point of view, you would have to be very happy with what you see and how you see the players playing. I think they went through Leinster with no real test, but they had a big test against Kilkenny, to be fair. The draw match the first day, and then the second day built up a good lead. Kilkenny brought them back to a point, but they finished that game very, very strong. I think Micheál Donoghue, he's picking from a full panel. He doesn't have any injuries that I know of anyway, which is a great advantage for a manager. So looking at it from a Galway point of view, things are going very well, but you have to play and you have to perform to your potential every day you go out. So I think the Galway lads, Micheál Donoghue, I like his style. He's quiet, he says the right thing. You know, he's beaten this drum that he hands it over to the players now. They have to deal with the situations inside the white line, and there's not much. The managers can do a certain amount when things start to go wrong, but if the players don't show leadership and stand up on the day, you know, that's all for nothing. But this Galway team, I believe, have put in their time, lost a couple of All-Irelands, 2012, 2015 to Kilkenny. There's a lot of them players still on the panel and still on this team, and I think they've learned some valuable lessons over the last 5 or 6 years. So we'd be hopeful in Galway that we put in a performance against Clare on Saturday, and hopefully it'll be good enough to win. Yeah.
Okay, we'll dwell more on that semi-final shortly. Kieran, let's deal with the Limerick Cork semi-final. And speaking to you earlier in the year, back I think in February, you were very optimistic about Limerick's chances.
Yeah, I was, and the reason I was optimistic was what I was seeing manifest in front of me. What I was seeing in regard to the squad size, in regard to our ability, in regard to the bench, in regard to the hurts that would have been through in around minor and 21. And on top of that, then the new system was tailor-made for Limerick because they were young, they were eager, nothing to lose, go out, express ourselves, we'll see what happens. And you know, to be fair, they've done that in every game bar one, and that was down in us. And I suppose the huge learning in that for me really is that's what happens when you're not mentally prepared and focused going into a game. And business as usual then the last day against Kilkenny. So in relation to Sunday, I'll pass you on to the boys now because I have no notion of educating any of these guys on my right hand side, but I'll come back when 1 and 2 are finished. I'll pass it to my body here, right?
Brian Cochran, Cork, a horrendous league campaign, only saved their status in a relegation playoff win over Waterford, but still end up Munster champions. Red hot favourites going in on Sunday.
I don't think they were red hot favourites on Sunday. Yeah, I mean the year started out positive with a win against Kilkenny, and went downhill a bit then for a while. But you know, at the end of the day, I mean, the league is all about preparation for the championship. You know, we've probably all won leagues and lost the first round of the championship the month after, and the year would have been seen as a kind of a failure. So, I mean, it's all about championship hurling, and you know, in fairness, they you know, started against Clare, and you know, that there wasn't much in it that day, and you know, there's a lot of pressure on them though. I mean, you know, they got to the semi-final last year and were probably unlucky at one point in terms of, you know, sending off kind of made a difference to the game when Damien Cahill, they'd just gotten on top at the time, and so they're still hurt over that, and they got a lot of criticism over that, and some of the individuals who were involved, you know, took a lot of flack. So they're you know, they're going to be feeling pressure to try and make up for that on Sunday, and whilst I don't believe that, you know, there's not much of a difference in terms of the betting odds, you know, I think there's, you know, people are saying the more Croke Park experience than Limerick, and that should stand to them. So, you know, that does add some pressure. So, but yeah, I mean, great Munster campaign. But if they lose on Sunday, winning the Munster final won't be any. It'll still be. It won't be a great year if they don't get to the final. If they don't go further.
Brian, you're very good at 9 games down in Cork. How's Seamus Hammedy's hamstring?
To be honest, I don't know. I just heard it. I heard it yesterday that he had tweaked something. I mean, you always hear these things. I'd be very, very surprised if he's not playing on Sunday. You know, there's the medics and the physios. They can do amazing things these days. So I'd be very surprised even if he ends up in a freezer down in Wexford for the next few days in these cryo chambers or whatever. But I'd be very surprised if he's not playing on Sunday.
Yeah. Ali, you were quoted after the win over Kilkenny that Limerick, for a young team, had matured beyond their years, and you also said they had a very astute management.
They're both correct. I haven't changed my view on either of those things. You know, they have. I suppose I wouldn't have gone along with the notion at the start of the year that Limerick were going to progress as far as they have. For no other reason other than, you know, they're at a very low level in terms of their learning curve, and I think most Limerick people wouldn't have expected them to develop as quickly as they have. I think for most Limerick people the priority was get out of Division 1B, because, you know, we've been stuck down there for too long, and I think if you ask me at the start of the year, everything after that would have been a massive bonus. And I think over the course of the league, you know, they won the Munster League as well. Let's not forget that. Like, I think that was a great foundation for them as well, because they got into the habit of winning. I think as regards the reference to astute management, like, the one thing I have to take, or you have to give huge credit to John Kiley. First of all, he's been around for a very long time in terms of his involvement as a player, in terms of his involvement as a manager, selector with intermediate under 21 teams, obviously involved with the successful Limerick under 21 team. So he knows what he's about. But just one area in particular, like, I think, you know, anecdotally, people in Limerick would have heard that, okay, he has to facilitate the Napier lads early this year. They were in All-Ireland Club semi-final at the time. A lot of very, very good players. A lot of people in Limerick felt, you know, if you're going to succeed and if we're going to be successful in terms of getting out of the league, we have to have the Napier players. I think he made a very bold move there. I think he stuck his neck out and said, okay, we have a big panel here. We're going to give everyone game time who's deserving of game time, and if you have the jersey, you keep the jersey. And I think a lot of players, the likes of, for instance, Dan Morrissey, Garrod Hegarty, Seamus Flanagan, Graham Mulcahy, even a lot of these guys, I'm not so sure would they have been on everyone's top 15 maybe at the start of the year, and they have been. So I think for that reason alone, huge credit must go to the management. I think everything they've done this year, they got a lot of flack, remember, last year as well. You know, they got a lot of flack last year for maybe mistakes that were made against Clare, maybe playing a relatively inexperienced team against Clare. But I think they've learned from that. I think he's done his homework. In a professional capacity, he's a very, very able guy in his capacity as a principal. So I think all those virtues have come to the core now, or have come to the fore. I think, look, next Sunday is going to be another learning curve as well. It's 70,000 people plus. Up in Croke Park, it's going to be a completely different arena, and I think it'll be tested again. Like, but look, from a Limerick perspective, I think we're in, call a spade, we're in bonus territory. You know what I mean? And anyone who tells you otherwise, who says that they expected Limerick to get maybe to this level, you know, I'm not so sure. Would that be the common view?
Yeah. Ali, Kieran touched on the bench. Peter Casey on the bench. 3 former All-Stars on the bench. Limerick haven't had that choice for a long time.
Absolutely not. We've in my memory, I think, to be fair, we went out at times and you might have had maybe 11 or 12 proper guys who were of the standard, and then you're hoping kind of 3 or 4. Like, not only have we got, and this isn't by way of blowing up Limerick, but I think we are blessed with the amount of talent we have available to us in the county. They're products maybe of the academy, or products of successful colleges teams or under 21 teams. But, like, you know, those guys in the bench, I believe from talking to lads who are involved that the competition for the number 26 jersey alone inside Limerick is intense, which was never the case. There's probably 4 or 5 guys in Limerick who won't even be on the 26 who up to now would have been contenders for your starting 15. And I think, look, there's no substitute for competition inside and training. Like when you go in training matches can be fairly mundane, as we all know. You can go in sometimes, you can be marking the same fella, you go through the motions. Now every time you go to a training match, unless you're impressing, there's a risk there you're not going to be on the starting 26. And I think that can only be a healthy thing. You know, Ollie mentioned about the Galway setup. Like Galway for the first time last year probably had a very, very strong bench. They were bringing on big name players who otherwise would have been starting. Like, and that's, you know, there is no substitute. That I think, you know, I'm going to stick my neck out. I think we probably have a slight advantage over Cork in that sense. I think the game is going to come down to the last 10-15 minutes, and I think that's when you're going to see the bench rolled out. And I just think we have a marked advantage over Cork in that regard.
Brian, would you agree with that the Limerick bench is stronger than Cork? I put it to you that a lot of the Cork bench is untried, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of truth to what Ali just said. I mean, when the fixtures were announced, I remember John Myler saying that, you know, because of the number of games and the closeness of the games, that he was going to have to play his whole panel. That didn't really kind of transpire. It was kind of the same team, and if it changed, it would change due to injuries. So that would be a worry in Cork in terms of the strength of the bench. And unfortunately, no, it's a 20-person game at this stage. You know, over the 75 minutes or whatever. So I mean, we saw it in the Ireland final last year, where, you know, Galway brought on guys who actually took the game by the scruff of the neck, and you know, whether Cork have those or not remains to be seen. But I mean, they've got they've got good players in the bench, but I'm not sure it's at the same level where there's extreme competition for number 26 and number 27, similar to some other counties.
Kieran, where do you think Limerick can beat Cork? In what areas of the field? What do they have to do? They're getting a reputation of being able to create all this space for the forwards and all that sort of thing. What do they have to do to beat Cork? Who do they have to contain on the Cork side, and where can they win it?
Yeah, well, I suppose it's going to be a totally different game to the Kilkenny game. Cork have about 4 forwards that will hurt most teams in this country, whereas Kilkenny's backs are better than Cork's. I don't see any major difference tactically how they went about their business down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. I think it's some of the same, and I think that would get us across the line. But I also see the game possibly taking a life of its own Sunday. If one team takes the eye off the ball tactically, like, there's no difference really in a Cork team playing them now of old. You know, cut out the spaces, live in their ear, and don't give them grass. You have a great chance. Give them grass and they go to down you. Yeah. So the way they set up in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, meaning they defended very well. Dara Dunham and Keane Lynch dropped back probably 5.5 and a 7.5, and the half hour line was pretty high as well. So outside of defending and minding the house, you're also creating space up front. Funny enough, both sets of forwards rely on top class ball from half back line or midfield. Cork possibly this year don't really mind the high ball because Harmony is very good to win it. Conor Lehane is due a big game. He's two. Pat Horrigan, possibly as it stands now, technically is the best corner forward in the country by a country mile if you watch him closely, and his skill, what he can do with the ball. Also, Kingston is a serious threat, and the other two then they're serious workers. So defensively, if we go out and set up correctly, I give ourselves a great chance. If we give a bit of space, as I said, it could take a life of its own. But I don't think we're that naive after the last 5 games, and especially against Clare. You know, tactically we got that very wrong in the second half. You know, Stevie Wonder is blind, he would have seen that. So I'd be hoping they won't make the same type of mistake in such a huge game in Croke Park. So I'm taking it for granted that's spotted, and if they cover those angles, I'll be honest, I can see Limerick coming through with a win.
Yeah. Right, we'll move on to the semi-final on Saturday. Derek, I suppose it was a difficult game for Clare in the quarter-final, coming off the defeat in the Munster final, and I suppose more so the manner of the defeat, because for the entire first half one could only see one winner. It kind of went pear-shaped in the last few minutes before half-time, and went pear-shaped completely in the second half. But they picked it up and had a good win against Wexford. There are probably a lot of similarities between Clare, apart from the personnel, Clare of 2018 and Clare of 2013, coming maybe a small bit under the radar. I think he lost in the Munster Championship to Cork 5 years ago, beat Laois, beat Wexford. People said, so what, and didn't beat Galway, you know.
Yeah, so I mean, just talking to the lads beforehand, the build-up is maybe a bit more subdued after the loss in the Munster final, and Ollie and Brian were saying the same. In Cork, it's a bit subdued. So definitely, I was going to the Munster final kind of expecting to win the game, really, to be honest. And I saw Clare win that game, and especially at half-time, I was sitting pretty with my prediction. I thought we had it, but Cork has been kind of a trend with their game this year. They're stuck in the game even though they weren't playing that great, and they managed, when they did get their purple patch, then they made the most of it. So Clare, I suppose the Wexford game really was perfect after that, because it wasn't, we didn't blow them away, and we didn't really have a majorly impressive performance, but we still got the win. And as a result, going into the Galway game, we're underdogs again. And I'm delighted to hear Ollie saying they don't like hearing that it's Galway's to lose, so we'll keep saying that anyway. So I would think probably suits Clare going in underdogs against underdogs against Galway, but Galway, from what I've seen so far this year, and I went to the Leinster final, they're the most impressive team that I've seen live so far this year. So.
Ollie, whether you like it or not, your favourites on Saturday. How much of a wake-up call was the draw in Leinster final for Galway?
I think it was a big one. I think Galway had come through, as I said before, Galway had come through Leinster, and there was no, they cruised through the games, and the Dublin game in Pearse Stadium was a dead rubber really at the end of the round robin series. Kilkenny, on the other hand, came from behind against Wexford. You know, Dublin put it up to Kilkenny for long periods in that Leinster match as well. So I just felt that Kilkenny had a couple of more, a few harder games than Galway in the run up to the Leinster final. So that was a great game for me, from my point of view, and that was a great game for Galway to get through the match. And then, I mean, some of the hurling they played in the replay in the first 20 minutes was really exceptional stuff. Kilkenny fought back as they do, they're never gone away. A few scrappy goals, and next thing Galway were pint up, and we were kind of sitting in the stand thinking, is this going to be the same Kilkenny performance as old? You kind of think you're well ahead, and you look up at the scoreboard and they're only a point behind, and you're kind of thinking, oh geez, last 10 minutes this is going to be a tough one. But to be fair to the Galway team, they pulled through. Now, as regards being favoured, I think they were favoured last year, went into the final as well. I think it's a tag that didn't sit that well with the Galway teams in the past, but I think this team is a bit more mature. I think they can deal with it a little bit better. They were favourites going into that Leinster final again with Kilkenny this year. I know they only drew the match, so I don't think they're going to get carried away this year with the favourites tag for Saturday. As I said, me, I don't know, they have a process there, and I think they approach every game. I know it's a cliche where management teams say, oh, we're going to treat it like any other game. It's not really any other game. It's an All-Ireland semi-final. The prize is to get to a final. It's a big prize, at stake. But I'm sure they're trying to stick to the same process they've been used all year. And it's like the lads say, that's the dream for every team. You keep it condensed at the back and you open up front. That's what you want. As Kieran said, you try not to give forwards grass in front of them that they're going to run into. And I think Galway will have that idea, and I'd say Clare will have that idea on Saturday.
Yeah. Just as you have the mic there, what's your take on Cork and Limerick?
It's very, very hard to call, and I mean, Limerick, a lot of people have been looking at them early in the year and saying, yeah, they have a lot of great potential. For me, I think Cork were disappointed last year in the semi-final loss to Waterford. Talking to a couple of Cork people after, they just felt that they didn't do themselves justice on the day. They've come through again, winning Munster this year, and I think that they've been targeted in the semi-final. I think that Limerick is going to have a tough day the next day, and just from the motivation point of view, Limerick did very, very well the last day when they had a man sent off against Cork, and it was an unbelievable performance really against Cork. But I can see the Cork management team drilling that into the guys for the last week and a half and saying, lads, the next day is going to be different. You drew the match against 14 players. It's completely unacceptable. So I think from a motivation point of view, I think Cork might have that little edge. Limerick, Ollie's right beside me here, but Limerick are very, very good now in fairness. But I just think that it's very reassuring. I just think that semi-finals are a big day. They're a big day. I don't know. I think Cork have a little bit more experience. I agree with that as well. Limerick have a lot of guys that can come on to make a difference. If you ask me to put a tin or charity bet on, I'd probably put it on Cork.
Right. Right. The lads have been very forthcoming with their views. I'm sure you all have views, and maybe you have questions. Is there anyone who has a question that would like to ask the panel, or a specific member of the panel? If you put up your hand, give me your name, and above all, give me your county. Any questions? The name, please.
Brendan Duggan, Limerick.
Brendan Sullivan. Duggan, Limerick. Right, Brendan.
I'll just ask Ollie there, like, traditionally, the last 15, 20 years, Galway club hurling had a reputation of being absolutely, brutal stuff in the sense that they'd kill each other at club level. Has that gone out of the club scene and to your advantage where now the county is really pulling together?
Has it gone out? No, it hasn't. And I mean, I know, but I find that is. I know it's not your opinion. I know that's an opinion out there. I find it so lazy that people would say that. I've been at Kilkenny games. I've been at Tipperary club matches, and Ollie, you know the story. Like, lads, it's hard going at club level, and that's it. And you know what I mean. Obviously, there was incidents in the media and stuff that you don't want to see in the media. But for me, you look at this Galway team. Okay, now this is. I give you a counter argument to. Oh, the clubs were all fighting and they couldn't get on. Now they're all best buddies and we're winning all Irelands. For me, that doesn't work at all. My reasoning is, when you go back 10 or 15 years ago, as you're talking about, name forwards that you could say, that guy's going to get 2 points today. That guy's going to get 2 points in play. That guy's going to get 2 points in play. Do you know what I mean? Think about it. Okay? Had we the same number 3 and number 6 going back 10 or 15 years? No. I played with, I'd say, 5 or 6 different number 3s beside me. And probably another 5 or 6 number 6s. Do you know what I mean? Had we guys that you could say, he's going to get scores. It's a completely different Galway team. Conor Whelan will get a few scores for you. Conor Cooney will get a few scores for you. Jason Flynn will come on and get a few scores. Niall Buck started only kind of getting on the team now and again, getting 4 points, getting 3 points in play. You know what I mean? Johnny Burke, Johnny Cohen, David Burke midfield, doing really, really well. So I prefer to compare hurlers with that generation with hurlers this generation, and not go into this. It just annoys me so much. Thanks for asking the question, by the way.
What I would say is that Galway team seem extremely united and that they have it right.
Yeah, no.
It's been building for a few years, you can see.
They are, but will they be skin knuckles when it comes back to Ireland in September when we're back at the club? For sure they will. That's no problem. And that's the way them players get on. That's the way they act. Like, I've heard stories before, like, about lads that they don't get on. And you know what? The players actually, the players that we're talking about, a guy said this to me in about, oh, they don't even talk. I said, Skin, they live together in Ardmore. They live in the same house. And you're telling me they don't get on, they don't talk. So that's just one example, right? So, I think that was just lazy, it was just cheap. Look at the hurlers we had. Had we enough quality to win our Irelands when I was playing 10 or 15 years ago? My answer is no. We got to 2 finals. If we were good enough, we'd have won them. We just weren't good enough on the day. Simple. And you had a Kilkenny team that was mowing on in front of them, so that was tough as well. But you went on to Kilkenny for club hurling. There was county lads wearing off each other below. No, it's not a big deal because they're winning our Irelands,
We know nothing about it in Limerick, Ollie.
I'm sure that a couple of clubs used to come down play challenge matches in Limerick, and I used to tell the boys to bring their gloves with them because they were coming down there. The boys there.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, here. Name, please. Dan Taylor from Tipperary. You're sort of out of the loop this year, haven't you? Right, Dan.
How do you fix the club hurler? Because the club hurler is getting gone over with all this new championship coming in, and like, I suppose when Tip were in it up to late, Zara playing county finals,
Yeah, like who'd like to take that? Derek, will you take that?
Yeah, well, I'd be of the opinion that they should set a split calendar for the county and the club. I'd do away with the pre-season tournaments. I'd move the league back, and I'd have I know they brought All-Ireland back to August, I'd bring it back even further maybe again. And I'd give the first January, the first 7 months of the calendar year completely to county. And I'd give the following 5 months completely to the club, and I'd run the whole club in the same calendar year as well. So you'd have the All-Ireland. That would be what I would see. The one argument against that, I suppose, would be the Fitzgibbon Cup cuts in then into the county team. But I think it's just, that's a necessary, I suppose, the lads that are playing on both panels there, they're going to have to make a choice, I think, and stop pandering to them, and just that'll be the only way I'd see that being fixed.
Kieran, just on that very point, it was anticipated that the month of April would be set aside for the club. In Limerick we were good boys, we did that. I think the same in Cork, Brian did that. Clare certainly didn't play any club championship in April. Do you think that should be firmed up, and that all counties should be made do it, or should it be still optional like it was this year?
Matt, I started playing with Limerick in 1988. I retired in 2005 or in 2018. This has been a topic every year from that length of time. So what I'm trying to say, I suppose it hasn't been addressed correctly ever. Okay, as Brian said, like 2/3 of my career with Limerick was knockout, gone. So you're back with the clubs, right? So I suppose back then it suited the club, but now it's totally different. The club are always going to be kind of a poor second, and I mean that in a nice way. Yeah. And it's up then to the individual club and the manager, irrespective of whether it's senior or junior intermediate, or whether you've players with your county, it's up to them to manage it. For me, when I was involved in Patrick's 3 years ago, I loved it. I didn't want to see any county players. I wanted to see what I had, and it suited me. So you can use it to your advantage if you go about it in the proper manner as well. But I'll just listen to the feedback Ali was given there, Sachin. It was a great question. And I just thought when he said looking at number 3s and number 6s 15 years ago, you can't compare, to be fair, because the whole game has totally changed. A full back in my time certainly wouldn't be taking a puck out. Likewise, possibly a centre back wouldn't, because if it happened, the goalkeeper might be taken off. So the whole thing has changed in around the coaching, in around how you set up. So like, it's evolving, and it's still evolving with whatever year is going to come. And there's going to be a big change in 2018, and they'll be talking about this in 2022. The changes is frightening.
But
so
is it evolving for the better, are you saying, Kieran?
Listen, to be fair, it is. Okay, there isn't too many hurdles being broken. That's number one, right? That's okay. But at the end of the day, it's up to, like, Galway All-Ireland champions for one reason only, I believe. Michael Donoghue got it right. And these boys have serious respect for him. And he laid down the law and had to be laid down. You know, you nearly have to have a chip in your head as a kind of a commodity to be an inter-county player now. It's kind of going out and doing a job. I'll just take Dermot Burns, for example. He's doing a nice, tidy job at Limerick, but I believe only going at 40 or 50% of his potential. He's just doing his job. There's buckets more than him. So we're kind of holding him back slightly instead of letting him off. So I suppose really that's up to every individual manager and coach and staff who they bring to the table, and how they're going to set up, and how are they going to utilise the squad they have in front of them.
Are we coaching individual flair out of players?
Well, it's a possibility. It's a possibility. Of course it can happen. Like if you're a halfback, like, you know, every player has a job to do now. Like in fairness to Brian Corkin, like he was top class for a cornerback, going up catching the ball and out like a rocket. Like a cornerback gets it now, if he catches it's gone to 5. Whereas Brian Corkin might be in the midfield and hand passing it 10 to 10. So that's only one little example. It's changing hugely. Definitely the game is quicker, without a doubt. And it's kind of, sometimes I enjoy it, and sometimes I kind of scratch my head. I love going out seeing 15 to 15 and let him at it. Okay, the sweepers come in, not only the sweeper, but you know, sometimes there's 8 or 9 there. And so that's a huge challenge to the opposition. How are you going to crack that system? So the modern manager and the modern coach, you know, to be kind of half a mathematician, because what could come ahead of him?
Yeah. Right, and I suppose that you mentioned the whole sweeper system without wanting to dwell on it. Ali Moran, what's your take on is it to the detriment of the game, the sweeper system?
Absolutely.
You're saying that now as a forward, or you are saying it as somebody?
No, just, look, we're all hurling spectators, I suppose, at this stage of our careers. No, look, I hated the side of a sweeper. Look, it would have been traditional for most club teams, even county teams, would have had a system whereby they would have even dropped one back in, you know, that was happening 10, 15 years ago. So the sweeper system isn't a new phenomenon from that point of view. Look, I think as regards a spectacle, and again wearing your hurling hat, everyone wants to go to a hurling match, watch 15 on 15, watch a flow to the game, and I just got the impression watching a lot of the games up to this year, might add, right, that they were difficult enough to watch. You know, Clare at times were difficult to watch. Wexford in particular, with and I know I could see what Davey was trying to get at. He was trying to bring a bit of, I suppose, structure to their game where maybe they didn't have structure before. So I get the logic behind the sweeper system, but from look, it's all about results at the end of the day. The sweepers were brought in. Why did Waterford bring in a sweeper? Because Wexford took him for 4 goals below in Wexford Park. They won in the following year. Derek McGrath brought in this very rigid sweeper system, and to be fair to Tyke de Borca, he executed it very well. But what happened then? Every club team in the country started doing it. Camogie team started doing it. Under 14, under 12 hurling teams started bringing a sweeper. So, am I a fan of the sweeper? You probably gauge from that answer that I'm absolutely not. I think just on that, I think this year has seen, hopefully, the last of the sweeper. I think teams now are trusting themselves a lot more. I do agree with Kieran. I still think at times, watching some of the matches, and Limerick have had elements of it this year as well, where there can be a little bit too much choreography going on. It can be a little bit too structured at times. My concern is that maybe that's stemming from academy structures in a lot of cases, whereby are we pulling really good players from the clubs that are standing out for their clubs, or are we pulling out guys that just can adapt to a system better than others? And I suppose if there's one thing, even as regards the 2 matches coming up the weekend, you'd hope that 2 teams just go at it. I think that's what I like most about watching Galway. I just think they've big men. I think that's now the template. You have to have big, athletic, fit guys that can all hurl, and I think they trust themselves. Kilkenny did it for 10, 15 years. Their whole success was predicated on being able to win your own ball, and I think a lot of these systems are based on getting the ball out of contact, avoiding contact, and looking for space, whereas I think when you get to this stage of the championship, it's going to be based on who physically can win their own battles, and you know, who can win the 50-50 balls. And I think the sweeper, really from that point of view, is redundant, and I hope it's redundant for a while. I think it's been very difficult to watch. It's been dare I say it, nearly a scourge in the game, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think we've seen the last of it.
Sorry, if I may come in just for 1 sec, I don't want to hog it now, but if going back to the Wexford and Clare game, the game itself now was quite poor. And Wexford still went with the sweeper about 10 minutes into the second half, and it was kind of a knockout game. But the one thing I saw in Clare this year for the first time in a while, and I think it could be stemming from the coach that we have was in Clare for a while and played a certain way. Now he's with Limerick, and Limerick are playing a certain way. But definitely I thought Clare this year had mixed it up slightly. And certainly against Limerick, they were a lot more direct this year than I have seen in the last 5 or 6 years. Because they got rid of
but on that, Kieran, I think Clare too have finally found a position for Derek's clubman, John Conlon, and just gone direct. Like, he's an absolute beast at 14 too. So now, where before they're looking to hit narrow channels, hit the precise ball, now they know they can go straight into Conlon. He's going to beat his own men, he's going to cause havoc, and if he doesn't score, he's going to offload. And I think that's a massive option now that I suppose they've identified too. It's been a major string in their feather as well this year.
Absolutely. The only place, Ollie Canning, that you'd find sweepers in Galway is in the broom press.
Yeah, I don't think, if you look at the Galway team the last couple of years, they've actually had to adjust, because when they played Wexford in the Leinster Championship, they came up against the sweeper, so Galway had to adopt, and Aidan Hart was usually the guy that wins sweeper on the Galway half back line, and he executed that pretty well, even though it wouldn't be a system we'd be used to. But I think the advantage, and Ollie's right, the advantage the Galway has, they played man on man, or they played, you know, the 6 forwards that try and win their own ball up front. So against Waterford again in the final last year, there was a sweeper in place, but I think Galway were just reacting to the team they were playing, and I don't think Micheál Donoghue would be fancying the sweeper system any day soon. I think it's a bit like the ice bats came in there for a few years and everyone was jumping into ice bats, and now they're gone, thankfully, and now we're on speed bands and you're doing all this stuff before the training, and that's the new thing. So as Ollie said, hopefully the sweeper system is gone, because I think management teams, they were trying not to lose the game by too much. That's the feeling I got from it. They were trying to keep the score down, not lose by too much. But the fact that a team has not come along and had any major success using that system, I think it proves the point that it's very hard to win games with 5 forwards and no ring goal threat, you know.
Unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, it has been a riveting discussion, but the clock has beaten us. We have to wind it up in the next 5 minutes. A few little things we want to tidy up before we go. We have to get the predictions, lads. You're not getting away that lightly. But there's just one other issue which has captured the headlines in the last week. And Brian Cochran, you won't forgive me for coming to you first on this. You probably know what's coming. It's been a great year for hurling. The whole Liam Miller saga, I suppose, is a bit of a blight. And I suppose it's fair to say that Cork are not the villains in this one. Do you think Páirc Uí Chaoimh should be opened?
Absolutely. I think times have moved on. Unfortunately, we still tend to hide behind rules that are archaic at this point. It's a 45,000 brand new stadium. Unfortunately, there's more concerts than hurling games down there these days. So it's a shame if it won't be open. Croke Park was opened, and I think everybody, a lot of people didn't like the idea of it, but personally I think it was fantastic to see rugby and soccer played in Croke Park. I think times have moved on, we all need to move on. And Turner's Cross 7,000 versus 45,000 in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, absolutely. And I think I think it's actually done damage to the GAA over the last couple of weeks. There's been huge backlash in Cork, probably backlash around the country. I think if they don't make the right decision, it will harm the GAA and it will harm the brand.
I suppose it's fair to say, Brian, that Cork are far from unanimous about not opening it. There's very few people in Cork that don't want it open.
Absolutely, but again, it's this hide behind a rule. Rules are made to be broken.
Yeah.
And there's this, it's all about the Congress and all this kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, there's ways and means around it. And it's not about to me, it's not about a soccer game. And even if it was, it's a charity match, and it's absolutely the right thing to do. And I know there are people who disagree with me, but I think we're in, as Kieran said, we're in 2018. It's time to move on from the past, and I don't see the reality is you have clubs. I mean, there's probably the best club facilities in Cork is Nemo Rangers, a famous football club. But they've found ways and means of allowing 5-a-side soccer to be played in their Astro pitches, because they've made a sports club as a facility as opposed to a GA club, and but you shouldn't have to do that. And I was down at White Church a couple of months ago, an opening of a community premises where as a community centre there's a GA pitch, there's a soccer pitch, all into one. They share the dressing rooms, share the facility, and to me that's the way it should be. The days of the segregation, to me, should be put behind us, and freedom of choice, and we have a stadium. If we allow Ed Sheeran to play there, why wouldn't we allow Roy Keane and Ryan Geese to play there? That's my view.
Kieran, in a word, should they open it?
Yeah, I'll keep it brief. It's an opportunity to do the right thing for a fantastic cause, and I don't know why there's such a hullabaloo over it. Just go and do the right thing.
Yeah. Derek?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, after a couple of PR disasters with the GA for, say, the Newbridge saga and giving precedence to concerts over games in Croke Park and things like that, this was a golden opportunity for GA to do the right thing and get credit for it, but they haven't done it really in a timely manner. I think even now, if they went on and made it available, it would be great.
Ali?
Yeah, look, the lads have covered it all. I think it just beggars belief how the GEA, who get so much right, can get the simple decisions so wrong. I just think from a PR point of view, they need to just take a long, hard look at themselves, and as the lad said, just change whatever rules need to be changed and tweak whatever needs to be done, but just do the right thing and move on and park it.
Ali Kenny?
No, definitely not. I'm not going to disagree. I agree with the lads here, and especially as Derek said there, the GA have shot themselves in the foot a few times this year with a number of incidents, and this was a perfect opportunity. And I just think the PR person, whoever's working up there in Croke Park, is asleep at the wheel because, after a couple of big boo-boos early on, as Derek said, Newbridge, it was just a complete, looked like from the outside it was a complete lack of communication. They just tried to bully them into doing it, and people don't like getting bullied anymore. So, there was definitely a kickback on that. Then you had Croke Park being used as well for concerts this year. Matches have to go elsewhere. So it's a great PR opportunity, and they just did not take it. And a lack of foresight there, definitely from Croke Park. And if they do come along and reverse that decision and make it available, well, then they'll be the heroes again. And who doesn't want to be a hero? Do you know what I mean? So they still have the opportunity to want to do it. The will is there. I think it can be done. Yeah, certain amount of damage done. Yeah, just look, there are rules and regulations in place, and you cannot overlook that as well. I agree. I can see where they're coming from, but there are certain circumstances where you have to bend the rule or whatever you need to do for the good of the occasion and for that PR and that goodwill for people. And at the end of the day, I know in our club in Portumna, we're out selling a lot of tickets, and I know soccer people buy tickets and football people buy tickets and rugby people support the club. They give their €2 to support the clubs, as we do with all the other clubs in the area. And I think you have to be conscious of that as well. And at the end of the day, it was a no-brainer for me. It should have just gone ahead there without any fuss, and GA would have got a great clap in the back for it.
Right, Holly, it's that time of the evening. It's prediction time.
I thought you were going to buy me a drink.
You're the champions.
Yeah.
3 questions. Clare and Galway, call it.
I think...
in a word.
Galway.
Cork and Limerick.
It's going to be awful tight, but I just have a feeling for Cork. I don't know what it is. I just don't know what it is. I just think they've been waiting for the semi-finals since last year. They're going pretty well, and I think they'll have a lot of motivation from the draw match earlier on this year.
Cork and Galway.
I think Galway.
So you're retaining the title.
I just think we're in a good place, and I mean, lots of people have picked Galway besides me, so it's not just it's not like everyone's going for someone else, and I've been biased about it. I just think they're in a good place, and they have a really good, probably 17, 18 players now that they can call on, and that's what you need.
Ali, Clare and Galway.
Yeah, like that, I'd go with Galway too. I think they're a more experienced team. They're probably as close to as being a complete team. That's basically depending on whether they show up, and they have shown up almost every occasion they've gone out this year. I think they're a far more battle-hardened Galway team than we've seen previously. Look, I think Clare, if they can manage to play the game on their terms, they'll certainly give them a rack, but I just can't see this Galway team alone. Clare play the game on their terms. I think Clare, for me, just have maybe 3 or 4 areas with that Galway are going to target, and so I think Galway by 5 or 6.
Cork and Limerick.
Yeah, look, I'd be confident. I think I hear what Ali is saying. I do think Cork have the greater motivation of the 2 teams going in. I think there is a feeling in Limerick that we're gone further than anyone thought, but I think this is a different animal of a Limerick team. I think we've a more balanced team than what Cork have. I think we can play the running game, we can play a physical game. I think Cork need the game to be played in their terms, and I just can't see Limerick allowing that happen. I think it'll go down to the wire. Like I said, I think our bench could swing it for us. I think Limerick by 2 or 3.
Galway and Limerick.
Unfortunately, that's where the optimism stops. Yeah. Look, I think for the reasons that I've already mentioned, I think this Galway team is a serious team. I think everyone enjoys watching them because they play the game the way it should be. I think we are certainly on that trajectory. I think we're probably a year or 2 short of it, and then just based on Galway's greater experience, I think they're the team to beat.
Derek, Galway and Clare.
I'm travelling in hope more so than expectation on Saturday, so unfortunately I think Galway have that edge on us in a couple of key positions, so I think Galway are going to win that, unfortunately.
Cork and Limerick.
I think Cork are 2 or 3 years further down the line in terms of their team's progression, and I think from the games I've gone to, I think Cork have a better team and I think they'll beat them.
Cork and Galway.
I'd rather reserve my until later on, but I suppose if I'm putting a spot today, I'll chance Cork, sure.
Brian Corcoran, who are going to be runners up to Cork and the All Ireland?
I don't care.
Brian, seriously, Clare and Galway, how do you see it?
I think Galway I think Galway are a better team, but I think it's going to be a lot closer than what some people think it might be. I wouldn't write off Clare by any means, but I think Galway will pull through in the day.
The big one, Limerick and Cork.
Limerick and Cork, again, I think it's going to be very close, but I think Cork will get there. But caveat is their leaders have to perform. They have to perform today, and the likes of Conor Lehan hasn't had the greatest of years so far, and Cork need him on Sunday. He needs to step up and play this beat. But I think these games they can turn on a referee's decision or a mistake or an injury. So I don't think there's going to be that much in it. But I think Cork's experience will get them over the line.
Cork and Galway.
My heart says Cork, and my head says Cork. Again, I think I would give Cork a great chance. Probably won't like me saying this, but finals of the past, I think Cork have gone in against Galway underdogs 86, 90, and have pulled it out on the day. I would never write off Cork in the final, but winning 2 in a row, it's difficult. Does put pressure on, but I think when it comes down to it, I think Galway will win the other.
Last word to you, Kieran. Clare and Galway.
Yeah, I suppose 2 teams are in the semi-final, and really that's the biggest game of the year. The final usually looks after itself once you get there. So Saturday and Sunday really winners take all. Yeah, I'd be inclined to agree with Brian Corcoran slightly. I wouldn't rule out Clare. I think if they hit form, I think there's a few little weaknesses in Galway where you can get at them if they have that tweaked. I definitely like what I've seen in Clare this year. They're gone a small bit more direct compared to what they were about 2 or 3 years ago. There's a nice little mix there. Podge Collins is coming into it at the right time. Conlon is coming into it. Ollie mentioned, Ollie mentioned Conlon. Duggan half forward. And who would you call short a bit of form the last time too?
Tony.
Kelly. And the corner forward, O'Donnell. Like, if half of that forward line click, they'll cause damage. Okay, the obvious thing is to say Galway are All-Ireland champions. They're physical, they're stronger, they've come up with that system before in the past, and they nullified it. But I wouldn't rule out Clare. I think it could go down to the wire.
You're saying Galway though?
I'm not, no, I'm fancying Clare.
Clare. Sunday.
Sunday. Yeah, like I'm taking for granted that all the boxes are ticked, and if they are, I see no reason whatsoever. With this present Limerick team, as I said, I made no secret at the start of the year, it's the best and the biggest squad I've seen in Limerick in my time. Okay, back in the day you might have 2 or 3 thoroughbreds. They have about 13 of them. And when you have that ability, and the strength and conditioning that they're after doing, coming through the academy in the last 6 or 7 years, You know, they are ready. Okay, we're saying 2 or 3 years, every year. You need to strike while the iron is hot. They need to get a taste of success. They need to get a taste of what it's like getting ready for an All-Ireland final. They've only one fence to jump. I see no reason, and I believe they've no fear. Okay, they beat Kilkenny by 2 points. We'll call a spade a spade. They should have hung 5 goals. So if they can size up that side of the game, because of the ability and skill they have in the inside line, they should be having 3 to 4 goals every day. Clare, Cork, Limerick, they're clocking up an average 23 to 28 points in every match this year. So bang on 2 or 3 goals to that, you've crossed the line. So I'm going for Limerick.
Limerick and Clare in a mouth-watering final.
Yeah, and funny enough, actually, you know, I believe if Galway get there, the last team they want to meet is Limerick. I think they'll nurse the other two. They're similar, and they have a handle on that. Whereas Limerick will be similar to Kilkenny, but quicker and crispier and more forwards. If it's Galway and Clare, I'd be in favour of Galway.
Right, ladies and gentlemen, that's it. I would like to thank you for being such a wonderful audience. I would like to say a very special thanks to Ollie Canning, who was a late recruit to the panel, Ollie Moran, Dara Conan, Brian Corcoran, and he had the last word, Kieran Carey.